And Tiki Tani there with the great Judy Garland hit from The Wizard of Oz all those years ago, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Now, you're with One Eyed FM. Peter Dunne here through until 12:30 today. Coming up maybe after midday, a bit of a surprise on the show. We'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. Meantime, of course, you can actually watch us as well as listen to us. Go to oneeyedfm.co.nz and then click on One Eyed FM TV and you'll see this show beaming out live at the moment. So you can see us as well as you hear us, and encourage you to do that. And you can call us 04478 0582. The lines are open, or you can email me with a message on oneeyedfm.co.nz/chat. Now, yesterday I had a really productive and good discussion with the principals of Newlands and Raroa Intermediate Schools in our local area, and I just want to say that we are very, very lucky. We've got two of the best intermediate schools in New Zealand, in Raroa and Newlands Intermediate. Both offer different programs, both offer really exciting programs, and both are schools that I think cater extraordinarily well for the kids in this area. And it was a fascinating chance to sit down with the principals. We didn't have a formal agenda. We didn't actually have them lobbying me about this issue or that, or my trying to defend this issue or that. We just had a good chat for about an hour on a range of current educational issues, and I came away from that feeling even more impressed and more confident about those two schools and the programs that they deliver, and more importantly the opportunities for our young people coming up who are there. So if you're listening and you've got a child either about to go to Newlands Intermediate or Raroa Intermediate, or there already, I just simply say to you, you're very lucky. You've got the best of educational opportunities available to you, and you've got some great teachers and some great leaders in those schools, so make the most of it. Now, moving on to Diane, who asks, does the decision to cut back the roading improvements between Otaki and Levin have any implications for Transmission Gully? Surely after all this time, Diane says, and with a decision to go ahead being made at last, we're not going to see it stymied once again, this time because of a lack of funding. No, Diane, we are not. What's happened with regard to Otaki and Levin has been really a rejigging of what's to be done. It's not a cancellation of the program. It just simply means it's going to be done over a longer time frame than was originally intended. But as you say, with Transmission Gully, it is all systems go, because we've been through all of the processes now, all of the approvals have been given, and I'm looking forward to work commencing on actually building the road sometime in the next couple of years or so. Maybe certainly by 2015. I would expect maybe some progress by 2014. And as you say, we've waited all this time. We're not going to see it stymied once again. So good news, rest easy. Transmission Gully is coming. I was going to say to a suburb near you, but that's not quite right. Transmission Gully is coming, and Wellington will benefit as a result. On now to Rosie, who says that in response to a caller last week, I said I was going to find out why shares in the power companies and Air New Zealand are apparently to be floated on the Australian Stock Exchange as well as the New Zealand Exchange. And she asked pretty bluntly and fairly, did I find out, and what is the answer? And the answer is, yes, I did find out, and it is as follows. We have a number of companies. I call them the Trans-Tasman companies, companies that operate on both sides of the Tasman. Bank of New Zealand would be one, ANZ Bank would be another, AMP, a number of big financial institutions, etc. Under Australian rules, apparently, under Australian law, for those companies, even though they operate substantially in New Zealand, but because they have a link into Australia, to be able to buy shares in New Zealand entities, those shares must also be listed on the Australian Stock Exchange. So this is a technicality. It's not an issue of saying we want to float shares on the Australian exchange because we want Australians per se to run in and buy them. It's more to allow a number of New Zealand companies that have actually a Trans-Tasman link to be able to come in and buy them, as we've said all along. So a technical solution. It's one that's brought upon us apparently by Australian law and not our own domestic law in New Zealand, but an interesting point nonetheless, and Rosie, thank you for raising it. Now on to Kumar, who wants to ask some questions about a rather mysterious body called the Immigration Profiling Group. And he says, have I heard of it? What does it do? And why does it seem to take up to about 2 years before it begins to deal with cases, and can we do anything to speed up its work? Kumar, the immigration profiling group, I think it's just been renamed as something else, and I can't remember what that name is offhand, but the IPG, or the immigration profiling group, was set up a few years ago within the Immigration Service to deal with people coming from what were considered to be at-risk countries. We didn't quite name them, but essentially they were Iraq, Afghanistan, Zimbabwe, and one or two other countries where there has been some sort of political upheaval, and there are all sorts of people seeking to escape, to put it bluntly, come to New Zealand, obviously to make a new life. And the IPG was really set up to process those applications to make sure that we weren't, and I say this with no disrespect to any of the people that have come here, finding a whole lot of war criminals or thugs or murderers or people who might be escaping from the clutches of the regime, coming here under the guise of seeking to make new lives. The reason why it takes so long is because there's a number of cases. There are a lot of people with perfectly just and proper reasons from Iraq or Iran or Afghanistan or wherever seeking to resettle in New Zealand. But they've just got more work than they can cope with. And I think, from my point of view, as a Member of Parliament who deals with quite a few cases where the IPG is involved, I think that is part of the problem. And it goes something like this. Most of the cases, as I see them, are pretty straightforward. There's not an issue of whether this person is someone who might be wanted by the International Court of Justice or anything like that. We don't have a Slobodan Milosevic or a Ratko Mladic or someone like that sort of trying to sneak in here in most cases. But the way the IPG works is to be exceptionally fair, so everyone takes their place in the queue. And what that means is that if you are Bashar Assad, let's say he was to suddenly turn up, he's not as far as I'm aware, but his case, which would be a rather complicated one, and then you're just a good honest citizen, you will still wait in the queue until Bashar Assad's case is resolved, and then you're quickly resolved a few next in line. And I think that's a mistake. I think all the easy cases, the straightforward ones, should be dealt with as they occur, rather than have to take their place in the queue. Because the problem is, you've got people waiting at the other end, and often unsafe or uncertain situations, when we know what the outcome's going to be. We know there's going to be a favourable decision made at some point in the future, but we just keep them dangling on a string, and I don't think it's right, and I think we need to just give away this pretense that it's being fair to queue people and deal actually with the easy cases as they occur and get them out of the way, get the people resettled and back with their families, and then dig in on the ones that are going to require a lot more work. So that's my view on the immigration profiling group, Kumar. It's something that's necessary because of international circumstances, but I just don't think it's working as practically as it could be. We're going to take a break now, play a few ads, and then we're going to come back to OMC, and maybe it's a good little... Their track actually probably sums up my comments about the IPG. How bizarre.